Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yeah, when I saw that, I said, well, this is a coup. I can't believe this. I thought it was the Obama shadow government is actually in the middle of a coup when I saw this last night. And I went to bed last night thinking it was a coup. And then I got to clean my glasses. Why couldn't I have discovered this before the... Anyway, so I got up here today and I started looking at the news and I found out, no, it's not a coup and it's not even being accurately reported. And I said, damn it, I fell for fake news again. Or misleading news. Did you see the story last night where the Intel, it was one of these Wall Street Journal breaking news alerts. Stop everything you're doing, including if you're going to church. Stop right now and read this. And it was one of these things. Intelligence agencies have decided to stop providing President Trump with any data. And I said, wait a minute. I mean, with everything else that's gone on, and now these guys, if you stop and think about this for just a second, yet the President of the United States, we have a world that is on fire. I mean, it really is. The world's on fire all around us. And these Intel guys, we already know the games they're playing with Flynn. We already know, and we keep learning about this. And by the way, 2 more stories today of absolutely no evidence that Flynn talked about sanctions with the Russians on that call. And absolutely no evidence that the Russians had anything to do with the outcome of the election. The story continues to be written, and yet if these guys who are undermining Trump have now decided they're just not going to provide him with any intel, and that, you know, many of them are Obama holdovers for what else is that but a silent coup? How can a president not be provided intel from around the world? That was, you see, I believed it could be possible because I know liberals and I know who they are and I know everything about them better than they know themselves. So I believed it could be entirely true. So I made it a point to follow up on that today when I got in here, and I found out that the story is much ado about nothing, and in fact, it was clickbait. For all intents and purposes, it was just designed to cause the exact reaction I had. I later learned that this is common, that it really was about how a lot of intel is not presented to presidents, and before it's sifted and before it's analyzed. And all this was a story that takes a common occurrence and they tried to make it look like something brand new and unprecedented. Now, if it worked on me, and I came in here and I researched it and I found out today that the original take I had on it was wrong. But can you imagine how this would work on people who are not highly trained, seasoned broadcast specialists and media experts like me? I shudder to think. At any rate, folks, great to have you here. The telephone number, if you want to be with us, 800-282-2882. And the email address is lrushmore@eibnet.us. The president with a press conference today was originally scheduled for noon, and then they moved it to 12:30. I wonder why. They moved it to 12:30, and the ostensible purpose of the press conference is to announce the new labor secretary pick. He is Alexander Acosta. He's obviously Hispanic. He clerked to the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. He's a former member of the Labor Board. So that's the primary purpose. Now, I don't know if Trump's going to take any questions outside of this. I only see one podium there, so they're not going to give the labor secretary his own podium. And, you know, Trump, folks, it is hilarious. The drive-bys are up in arms. They're claiming that Trump is destroying the conversation by not calling on him. At the press conference yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, the president called on Katie Pavlich of Town Hall, who, by the way, is a never-Trumper. Katie Pavlich, she doesn't like Trump. She never has liked Trump. I don't know if she's moderated on Trump now. My brother knows her very, very well. I've never met her. But apparently she's a never-Trumper and hasn't moderated much. And so Trump called on somebody who doesn't agree with him. She's from townhall.com. She's editor-in-chief there. And then he called on somebody from the Christian Broadcast Network. And the drive-bys are just ABC, CNN, they are just livid. Trump is violating the Constitution by not calling on them. So I went to the Constitution, and I looked at the First Amendment, the freedom of the press part. And I looked, I can't find where it says presidents have to call on CNN. And I didn't see the constitutional requirement that presidents call on NBC, CBS, or ABC. You hear about Dan Rather? Dan Rather says this is worse than Watergate. Did you see Tom Friedman in the New York Times yesterday? These people, I didn't think it was possible to become more unhinged, but they're doing it. Tom Friedman said, we had the attack on Pearl Harbor, and that was bad. And then we had the attack on 9/11, and that was bad. And then we had the attack on November 6th, 2016, and that was bad. So he equated the election of Donald Trump to 9/11 and the attack on Pearl Harbor, and he's still employed there. This is insanity. And, of course, Thomas L. Friedman, the L stands for Loopy, is considered one of the deans of the establishment press corps. I remember, I wouldn't expect you to remember this, but I remember early on in the Obama administration, you remember the first 2 or 3 months, he would have these workshops at the White House in a big room. I think it was the East Room. And one of he'd like a summit on jobs, and then a summit on Gitmo, and a summit on this or summit on that. And he would bring in a bunch of academics and media, well, not too many media types, but he would bring in specialists, and he'd have a group in all the 4 corners of the room. And they would work for 2 or 3 hours, say, on jobs. And at the end of the day, they would report to Obama. And the problem would be solved. There'd be a 2 or 3 hour job summit, and they'd all tell Obama what they had done, what they'd talked about, what brilliant ideas they'd put on paper. And Obama would announce another successful job summit, and everything. Whoa, man, this guy really cool. We fixed jobs. Well, Friedman was one of these things. It's a Friedman. He's a columnist. He believes that the Chi-Coms are setting the pace for the world. I never understood something about Friedman. Friedman believes in climate change, believes that the U.S. is destroying the world. If you go to China, you'll die of pollution. And yet he loves these people. At any rate, I'm asking myself, what's Friedman doing there? And it was typical. Folks, this was your average egghead establishment academic theoreticians have never gotten their hands dirty, much less dirt under their fingernails, unless it's playing golf, getting your tee out of the ground. That's it. And Obama, they had cameras, and they're televising some of this. And Obama is traveling the entire room. He stops in one corner and visits a group there, and they look up admiringly at him and report their progress. Yes, Mr. President, we have a great conversation here on jobs. Many, many ideas are being circulated. Obama, very good, very good. He go off to the next corner and talk to the next group. And Friedman was in one of those groups. What is he doing there? I mean, here's a guy, and they all thought they mattered, and they all thought they were making a difference. But more than that, there's a term for this that I cannot say on the air. You've heard the term. It's the first word is star, and the last word describes an act that in some instances produces a child, in others produces an abortion. So you have the star or the celebrity or whatever. Now, this is a room full of these people. And at the end of the day, they haven't done diddly squat, but they really are feeling special, like they really matter. And it was classic liberalism. Think about something, talk about something, hold hands, say kumbaya, and at the end of 3 hours of this, think that you've solved a problem. And so Friedman comes out with his piece yesterday comparing the election of Trump to the attack on America on 9/11, where 3,000 people died, and the attack on Pearl Harbor. And I think, Jesus, all you can do is just laugh at this stuff. Okay, Rasmussen has a presidential popularity poll out, approval poll. Trump is at 55% in this poll. The only other poll out there that I have seen presidential approval number was what? Gallup? And it had Trump at 40%. And Rasmussen has Trump at 55%. It's a poll of likely U.S. voters. Trump at 55 approval, 45 disapproval. The latest figures include 38% who strongly approve of the way Trump is performing and 36% who strongly disapprove. Trump is going to Melbourne, Florida on Saturday. He's going to have a rally. And I suggested that he do this. No, I don't know. No, I'm just telling you. I suggested he do this. You've heard me say it. Trump's support base, his voters, are all that he has. He needs this stuff. He's got to create scenarios where there are photos and pictures of thousands and thousands of people in love with Trump and going nuts to counter some of the phony fake news that the drive-bys are putting out. So I think, did I see this rally? It's sold out, whatever that means. The tickets are free, but it's sold out. It's at 5 p.m. on Saturday up in Melbourne. You ever been to Melbourne, Mr. Snerdley? Yeah, it's right up the road there. In fact, if you don't like the Miami weather radar, tune into the Melbourne weather radar. And we are covered by both sweeps. So that'll go probably an hour, hour and a half, and then Trump will come back here. So if you need to get around here, do it between 5 and 6:30 on Saturday. And President's Day is Monday, right? Wendy knew that for anybody. I'm seriously thinking, I get screwed on these Monday holidays. Nobody ever tells me about them. And I show up here, and I'm seriously thinking, this is intense here. I mean, I was telling somebody the other day, I got an email yesterday from a friend who was a good job, great show. I said, I tell you, I'll be honest with you, I don't remember it being more intense. I'm sure it has. I just don't recall it. I don't remember the number of hours required just to stay even with the flow of news, just to stay prepped and so forth. It genuinely, it really is. I'm sure back in the early Clinton days it might have been like this, the early Obama days, Gulf War I and Gulf War II, but I don't know, it just seems just incredibly. There's no rest. There's no breakup. There's no. I have to purposely carve out some time and just forget everything. But I don't have to. No matter what I'm doing, something is going to happen. The phone's going to blare, or something's going to happen. Like that alert I got last night at Wall Street Journal, and then the New York Times had one the night before. Both of them ending up to be really exaggerated. Cybercast News Service. 60% of refugee arrivals since the judge halted Trump's executive order come from 5 of the 7 countries that Trump wanted to temporarily limit those people getting into the country. 60% of the refugees admitted to the U.S. since Judge Robart out in Seattle put a stay on the executive order, originate from 5 of the 7 countries identified by Trump and Obama, by the way, as the most risky. Trump had a series of tweets today. I wouldn't worry about Trump. I know a lot of people are putting themselves in Trump's shoes. You watch the news. You see the assaults. You see the drive-bys. You see it, you expose yourself to it. You know what's going on. You wonder, my God, how's the guy holding up? I mean, you know how you feel, and even about you. You know how much pressure you feel, and it ain't even about you. It's about Trump. And everything that I have been able to amass, witness, put together says he's fine. Not that he's unaware. He's not living in a bubble. It's just that he's committed to his agenda, and all of this stuff is noise. And the media is not the number one thing in his world in terms of shaping his opinions on things or his agenda or his daily attitude. New York Times had a story that ran, I guess it was yesterday or maybe last night. I heard about it last night. Conservative talk radio stands by Trump despite turmoil. I didn't see the story. Snurdly sent it to me. Between the resignation of his national security advisor and the revelation that his campaign aides and other associates had repeated contacts with Russian intelligence officials, it's been a tough week for President Trump. But if his supporters on the right were beginning to doubt him, there was no sign of it on conservative talk radio, where Mr. Trump's contention that he was a victim of leaks and entrenched Washington insiders lit up the phone lines around the country. Then this. They quote me, but it's a selective quote, and they leave out the crucial thing in it, and that is what I was talking about. Here's the quote that they published. There is no evidence for the primary assertion that's driving this entire attack on Trump, Rush Limbaugh, the prominent host, said. This attack, continuing to quote me here, this attack is coming from the shadows of the deep state, where former Obama employees remain in the intelligence community. In another accusation, Limbaugh said they're lying about things, hoping to make it easier for them and the Obama shadow government to eventually get rid of Trump and everybody in his administration. And that's it. So they quote me saying there's no evidence for the primary assertion driving this, but they never mention what I identify as the primary assertion. So the reader is left to assume, and how many people reading this stuff actually thought, well, what's the primary assertion? They're just going to read it and absorb it. There's no evidence for the primary assertion driving this entire attack on Trump. So the reader is free to fill in the blank whatever they think the primary attack is. What I was talking about is this. And then this is a purposeful omission. It has to be purposeful. The primary assertion that I dispute is that the Russians and Trump hacked the election, causing Hillary to lose. That is a fraudulent, phony assertion. There's no evidence. There has never been any evidence. They have looked. Turns out Obama has been investigating Trump since before the election on this stuff. Why, by the way, was he doing that? If they thought Hillary was going to win in a landslide, why were they investigating Trump? But they were. We've learned that in a news story today. Obama was investigating Trump and ties to the Russians as far back as early October. And the point I made yesterday was there is no evidence. The primary thing that fuels this, the energy that's fueling all of this stuff on Flynn, is that the Russians hacked the election and cheated and determined the outcome, guaranteeing that Hillary lost. I think it's kind of important, New York Times, if you're going to quote me, to put what I'm talking about in the quote. By the way, folks, last night on the Senate floor and on the House floor, your beloved host, Rush Limbaugh, was blamed for people losing food stamps in the last 8 years. Rush Limbaugh, Senator Dick Durbin took out after me, and Mark Vesey, Democrat in Texas, they both blamed me for attacking labor unions and then promoting government shutdowns, which led to food stamp cuts and so forth. Now, why in the world would I be blamed on the floor of the House for something that happened during the Obama administration? What in the world is the politics of this? And the answer is 2 words: fundraising. But nevertheless, I'll take it. It's a badge of honor. Just wish my parents were alive. Hear their son's name regaled on the Senate floor. So the AP had a story today that Trump is overwhelmed by all these crises. No, he's not. Trump had a very casual meeting with 10 or 12 members of Congress today talking about the agenda. He was joking. It was lighthearted. It was excellent. It was off the cuff, informal. It was funny, and it was charming. He's not stressed over all this, or what would they say? Overwhelmed. If anything, he's late. If anything, he's listening to the program here for as long as he can before he has to go out there. and announce the new labor secretary. Well, we'll jip it whenever it happens. I don't know if there's going to be any questions beyond the introduction of the labor secretary. I mean, Trump gets in, gets it, and gets out. At the joint presser with Bibi Netanyahu yesterday, it was 4 questions. And I really hope it continues ignoring ABC, CBS, NBC. But if Dan Rather were there, that wouldn't be a bad guy to call on. But Dan Rather's not going to be there. So when it happens, we'll jip it. Here, let's go to the audio sound bites. Last night, Senate floor, during debate on the nomination of Mick Mulvaney. He's a Republican, South Carolina, be director of the Office of Management Budget, and he's going to make it. Here's Durbin, Dick Durbin of Illinois. Again, debate on the nomination of the guy to be director of OMB.
When Mr. Mulvaney and the Republicans succeeded in shutting down the government for 16 days in 2013, it cost the American economy $20 billion. Do you remember that? Rush Limbaugh got on his radio show and said, if they shut down the government, no one will even notice. Well, guess what, Mr. Limbaugh? They noticed. People struggling to survive in America who relied on programs like food stamps, they had their food in jeopardy and in danger because Congressman Mulvaney and his friends thought that a display of political power here, shutting down the government, was just the right recipe for America.
Wait a minute. These clowns told us throughout all these shutdowns, this 16 days big whoop, that no welfare was ever affected, right? There was no welfare checks that interrupted food, nothing. There weren't any cutbacks. There wasn't a suspension of food stamps being available. Well, this is lying through his teeth here. And blame this on me. Mr. Limbaugh got on his radio shows, they shut down the government, nobody will notice. They don't notice it when they don't told about it. You would be amazed at the number of times the government's actually shut down for arcane budgetary constitutional reasons. It happens a lot, and if you don't know about it, it doesn't affect you, only when there's a bunch of media hype. But they've always said that no impact ever comes. The last time they said there was starving kids in 95 in that budget deal. But to throw me in the mix, it just means, folks, that the mention of my name forces lunatic liberals to go to their checkbooks and start writing checks to Democrats. That's what this means. It has to. Well, there may be a little bit more to it than that, but that's clearly part of it. Now, let's go over to the House. This is during general speeches, when members just get up there and start blabbing. It was last night, and this is Congressman Mark Vesey, Democrat, Texas, talking about jobs and labor unions.
One of the reasons why we've seen the decline of pay in this country is because the Republicans and their efforts to undermine labor. And when you start talking about undermining labor, and when you turn on these talk radio shows, you turn on the Rush Limbaugh show, they're always talking about how bad unions are in this country. Think about the middle-class jobs that many of these union shops brought to all communities, whether it was the white community, the Hispanic community, black. They allowed people to be able to put some food on the table.
Who was it that wrote off the white working class in the last election? The Democrat Party, starting with an op-ed by Thomas B. Edsall that ran in the New York Times in November of 2011. They announced it as a campaign strategy. They were going to ignore white working class voters and instead throw in with what they thought was going to be a majority of all the minorities in this country combined into one giant coalition. But even beyond that, how do I make this sound like? That's right. I'm taking food off people's tables. That's exactly right. People want to put food on their table, and I'm taking food out of the mouths of babies. I'm taking food off their tables because I have criticized unions at some point. All of this going on during Obama's 8 years. So I guess we were more effective than we knew in gumming up the works of the Obama regime. I don't know, folks. Chris Cillizza in the Washington Post was listening yesterday. Here's the headline, his piece, that I think it just cleared. I don't know if this made the newspaper or if it's their website. Rush Limbaugh is exactly right about how Donald Trump can fix his problems. Do you remember what I said yesterday about this? Or were you? That's exactly right. Exactly. Well, I didn't know if you heard it because you've been there screening calls in the first hour and you're not able to. They quote me, and they quote me accurately. Rush Limbaugh, the conservative talk radio icon, has a solution, and a very good one, to Trump's current malaise. Here is an excerpt of Limbaugh's advice from his show on Wednesday. I'm going to tell you what I think is the best thing Donald Trump could do. Just focus on repealing Obamacare, and then focus on tax reform, and then just move full speed ahead on the domestic agenda. Make tracks. Do it obviously. Bring in people. Have meetings. Bring the Republicans up, the Democrats up. Has the president in a room telling them this is why we were all elected. This is why you Democrats lost. This is what we're going to do. We're going to work together. We're going to move these tax cuts forward. We're going to reform the tax code. We're going to repeal Obamacare. None of this, oh, man, I don't know. We should maybe wait 2 years. None of that. Just do it. If Trump would engage at full speed on his domestic agenda, which is why he was elected, then his people will stay with him no matter what this Obama shadow government tries. So Liza writes, that is very, very smart. That had to pain them. I mean, this whole story had to pain them because it's exactly, they had to admit, if Trump did that, he could once again leave them in the dust. If Trump would, I know Ryan had a press conference today on Obamacare, and he said that when they get back from the President's Day break, the President's Day is Monday. What, does Congress get a month off for that? When do they come back after the... Yeah, usually within a few days. So if they come back, Ryan said whenever they get back from the President's Day break, they're going to go full speed on Obamacare. I don't know. I just threw that out there, taking President's Day off. I'm not gonna have a weekend off because I got to get up early to be on Fox News Sunday. So that means I got to be here way, way earlier than I would normally be anywhere on a Sunday. On Sunday, I don't play golf till noon. Saturday, I play early, but Sunday, I just sleep till I wake up, whenever that is. Usually not much later, body clock being what it is. So I don't know. But if I do, you'll need a guest host, right? Or a best of. Can you imagine the best ofs we have to choose from? So it might not even need a guest. But I'll think it. I'll let you know. What's the latest you would need to know in order to go out and secure a guest host? Are there any guest hosts left? Because every one of them ends up getting their own national show. Who? Today would be the last day. Okay, so I've got to decide by today. All right. We'll take a brief time out. The Trump presser still has not begun. Mr. President's okay. You can go out now. I got most of what I intended to get in the first half hour anyway, so we're good. We're clear to go. While we have a chance, let's sneak in a caller. It's Jeff in Kansas City. Welcome, Jeff. Great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, Rush. Thanks for taking the call. Been
Yes.
a lot of years listening.
Appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Hey, just calling you. You were talking earlier about how you were quoted in the press in regard to Flynn them not having any evidence against Flynn in regard to the calls that he had made. I think the one important thing you missed was that they also did not point out that you were quoting the New York Times when you did that.
That's an excellent point. That is a superb. He's exactly right. What he is talking about, thank you, Jeff. I'm being short here because Trump may come out at any moment. New York Times has a story, conservative talk radio stands by Trump despite turmoil, as though we're it. Trump's got nobody left but me and a couple other hosts. That's it. Everybody's abandoned Trump. Trump's got nobody left except, of course, me. Damn it. And then they quote me as saying there is no evidence for the primary assertion driving the entire attack on Trump. This attack is coming from the shadows of the deep state, where former Obama employees remain in the intelligence community. They never identify what I was talking about. What I was talking about was this idiotic assertion that the Russians and Trump worked together to hack the election, guaranteeing that Hillary would lose. And what Jeff's point is, that's the New York Times story. It's the New York Times story that I was objecting to and disagreeing with and blowing up. And they quote me talking, but they never mention I'm reporting on their story, commenting on their story, and they left out the central thing I was talking about. When I say there's no evidence for the primary assertion driving this entire attack on Trump, they don't identify what I was talking about. So whoever read this really doesn't know what I was talking about. I was talking about the primary assertion, the reason all of this investigating is going on. The excuse for all of this is that the Russians hacked the election and that Trump was working with them. And they've been investigating this maybe since before October. And so I'm going to ask my question again. At all of this time, in October, early part of November, September, they thought Hillary was going to win. They had their own polls. They believed every poll that they produced that showed Hillary was up by 5, up by 6. They were ignoring every bit of evidence that Trump was doing well. And they literally thought this election, even 9 o'clock on election night, they still thought, and Hillary thought she's going to win. So in the midst of this confidence that they're going to win the election, why in the world are they investigating Trump? What is the point? There has to be a reason why they were doing it. And now the fact that they're liberals and they want to destroy political opponents, that's a big factor. Investigating Trump and coming up with something to ruin him sends a signal to any other Republican or anybody else that might someday think about running against the Democrat Party. Here is Josh in Brick, New Jersey. Hey, Josh, I'm glad you called, sir. Hello.
Hello, Rush. Thank you for taking my call. I have a quick question for you. You said during the transition that we're living in very precarious times and Trump can't go out and knock Obama personally. Now that with all that's been revealed, and as you've pointed out, this Obama shadow government, which is beyond leaks, it's deeper than that.
Right.
Do you believe it's time for Trump to take off the gloves and go after Obama personally?
Not until they can actually find Obama fingerprints. I mean, it's Obama. You know that he's there. You know that he's got these 250 organizations. You know George Soros. But if you're going to do that, that's akin to going after the king. Not that Obama's still president, but you're going after the guy running a Democrat Party. You better be able to have, without doubt, evidence. You better have conclusive evidence. There's another way of doing it, though, without doing it that way. The one thing, my buddy Andy McCarthy at National Review wrote a huge piece that has a central theme, and it is this, that Trump should release the transcript of the phone call between Flynn and the Russian ambassador. Because I've got 2 more stories here today at the top of my stack, of the Flynn stack. 2 more stories, NBC and NPR, both quoting intelligence officials, admitting they have no evidence to support the fact that Trump was working with the Russians. They have no evidence that the election was actually hacked. They have evidence that the Russians were trying. They have evidence that the Russians were meddling, but they don't have any evidence that the Russians had anything to do with the outcome of the election. And they don't have any evidence, and they've heard the call. Officials who have heard the call, according to NPR and NBC, are saying that there is no evidence that Flynn discussed the lifting of sanctions. It's not even clear who made the call. Some say that the Russian ambassador made the call. NSA was monitoring him because the Russians, the NSA monitors our enemies. I mean, they're tapping and monitoring his phone calls, and that's how they heard about this. And what it looks like is that the Russian ambassador kept bringing things up, and Flynn didn't commit to anything, but they were able to say Flynn was discussing with the Russian ambassador. This whole thing, folks, is just dirty, filthy. But they own the narrative on it. They've been able to create this narrative. But now, in the aftermath, here come these 2 news reports. There's no evidence that this happened. No evidence here. Release that tape. If they release the transcript of that tape, and everybody can read it and hear it and discover that there was none of what has been alleged, that would be the same as exposing, not maybe Obama, but the shadow government. People that are out there doing what they can to undermine Trump. I have time. We do. Grab soundbite number 6. The drive-bys are miffed that Trump is not calling on them. Trump is going to take questions beyond the subject of his new labor secretary. We have a montage of the media expressing their anger at Trump not calling on them.
President Trump avoiding some of these tough questions we just alluded to, right, by calling on only conservative outlets again today. How much longer can he keep up this strategy with the media?
For the third time in a row at a press conference, President Trump called on only reporters from conservative news organizations. He's avoiding the other networks.
Mainstream reporters who were clearly not happy with the fact that in this press conference did not call on mainstream news organizations, is leaning heavily on calling on conservative outlets. It's not because we're complaining as journalists, but they're cherry picking the questions, basically. They're not getting tough questions.
Will he stay concentrated, as he has been doing, on reporters from conservative outlets who are not asking him the pressing questions?
All of the questions have been handled by conservative press, and I think, Wolf, there's no other way to describe it, but the fix is in.
How juicy is that? A drive-by journalist whining and moaning about the fix being in because he is not being called on. As I pointed out, Katie Pavlich was called on from town hall. She's not a Trump supporter. It's just she didn't ask him about Flynn. And that's the only thing that matters, don't you know? Flynn. What did Trump know and when did he know it? That's all that matters. It's all that matters. And if nobody asks him that, then journalism didn't really happen. And if journalism didn't happen, it means nobody tried to destroy Trump. And that is what they will not tolerate. The Trump press conference has begun. He just announced a new labor secretary. We have to take our top of the hour break. This ought to still be going on when we come back. And we'll jip into that point. The conservative news outlets, as opposed to journalists, will be asking questions. See you then. Don't go away. In very measured tones, the president is firing howitzers at the media and the Washington establishment. I'll characterize this later. Let's just jip it now to get in here while we can.
Doing what I pledged to do. That's all I'm doing. I put it out before the American people. Got 306 electoral college votes. I wasn't supposed to get 222. They said there's no way to get 222. 230 is impossible. 270, which you need, that was laughable. We got 306. Because people came out and voted like they've never seen before. So that's the way it goes. I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan. In other words, the media is trying to attack our administration because they know we are following through on pledges that we made, and they're not happy about it for whatever reason.
He's really attacked them here before.
But a lot of people are happy about it. In fact, really? I'll be in Melbourne, Florida at 5 o'clock on Saturday.
Really launched it.
And I just heard that the crowds are massive that want to be there. I turn on the TV, open the newspapers, and I see stories of chaos. Chaos. Yet it is the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine, despite the fact that I can't get my cabinet approved. And they're outstanding people, like Senator Dan Coates, who's there, one of the most respected men in the Senate. He can't get approved. How do you not approve him? He's been a colleague, highly respected, brilliant guy, great guy. Everybody knows it. We're waiting for approval. So we have a wonderful group of people that's working very hard, that's being very much misrepresented about, and we can't let that happen. So if the Democrats who have, all you have to do is look at where they are right now. The only thing they can do is delay, because they've screwed things up royally, believe me. Let me list to you some of the things that we've done in just a short period of time. Just got here. I got here with no cabinet. Again, each of these actions is a promise I made to the American people. So we'll go over just some of them, and we have a lot happening next week and in the weeks coming. We've withdrawn from the job-killing disaster known as Trans-Pacific Partnership. We're going to make trade deals, but we're going to have one-on-one deals, bilateral. We're going to have one-on-one deals. We've directed the elimination of regulations that undermine manufacturing and called for expedited approval of the permits needed for America and American infrastructure. And that means plant, equipment, roads, bridges, factories. People take 10, 15, 20 years to get disapproved for a factory. They go in for a permit. It's many, many years. And then at the end of the process, they spend tens of millions of dollars on nonsense. And at the end of the process, they get rejected. Now, they may be rejected with me, but it's going to be a quick rejection. Not going to take years. But mostly, it's going to be an acceptance. We want plants built, and we want factories built, and we want the jobs. We don't want the jobs going to other countries. We've imposed a hiring freeze on non-essential federal workers. We've imposed a temporary moratorium on new federal regulations. We've issued a game-changing new rule that says for each one new regulation, 2 old regulations must be eliminated. Makes sense. Nobody's ever seen regulations like we have. You go to other countries and you look at industries they have and you say, let me see your regulations. And they're a fraction, just a tiny fraction of what we have. And I want regulations because I want safety, I want all environmental situations to be taken properly care of. It's very important to me. But you don't need 4 or 5 or 6 regulations to take care of the same thing. We've stood up for the men and women of law enforcement, directing federal agencies to ensure they are protected from crimes of violence. We've directed the creation of a task force for reducing violent crime in America, including the horrendous situation, take a look at Chicago and others, taking place right now in our inner cities. Horrible. We've ordered the Department of Homeland Security and Justice to coordinate on a plan to destroy criminal cartels coming into the United States with drugs. We're becoming a drug-infested nation. Drugs are becoming cheaper than candy bars. We're not going to let it happen any longer. We've undertaken the most substantial border security measures in a generation to keep our nation and our tax dollars safe, and are now in the process of beginning to build a promised wall on the southern border. Met with General, now Secretary Kelly, yesterday, and we're starting that process. And the wall is going to be a great wall, and it's going to be a wall negotiated by me. The price is going to come down just like it has on everything else I've negotiated for the government.
Beautiful door.
And we're going to have a wall that works. We're not going to have a wall like they have now, which is either non-existent or a joke. We've ordered a crackdown on sanctuary cities that refuse to comply with federal law and that harbor criminal aliens, and we've ordered an end to the policy of catch and release on the border. No more release. No matter who you are, release. We've begun a nationwide effort to remove criminal aliens, gang members, drug dealers, and others who pose a threat to public safety. We are saving American lives every single day. Court system has not made it easy for us. And are even creating a new office in Homeland Security dedicated to the forgotten American victims of illegal immigrant violence, of which there are many. We've taken decisive action to keep radical Islamic terrorists out of our country. Though parts of our necessary and constitutional actions were blocked by a judge's, in my opinion, incorrect and unsafe ruling, our administration is working night and day to keep you safe, including reporters safe, and is vigorously defending this lawful order. I will not back down from defending our country. I got elected on defense of our country. And I keep my campaign promises. And our citizens will be very happy when they see the result. They already are, I can tell you that. Extreme vetting will be put in place, and it already is in place in many places. In fact, we had to go quicker than we thought because of the bad decision we received from a circuit that has been overturned at a record number. I've heard 80%. I find that hard to believe. That's just the number I heard, that they're overturned 80% of the time. I think that circuit is in chaos, and that circuit is, frankly, in turmoil. But we are appealing that, and we are going further. We're issuing a new executive action next week that will comprehensively protect our country. So we'll be going along the one path and hopefully winning that. At the same time, we will be issuing a new and very comprehensive order to protect our people. And that'll be done sometime next week, toward the beginning or middle at the latest part. We've also taken steps to begin construction of the Keystone Pipeline and Dakota Access Pipelines, thousands and thousands of jobs, and put new Buy American measures in place to require American steel for American pipelines. In other words, they build a pipeline in this country, and we use the powers of government to make that pipeline happen. We want them to use American steel. And they're willing to do that. But nobody ever asked before I came along. Even this order was drawn, and they didn't say that. And I'm reading the order. I'm saying, why aren't we using American steel? And they said, that's a good idea. We put it in.
Jeez.
To drain the swamp of corruption in Washington, D.C.
Here we go.
I've started by imposing a 5-year lobbying ban on White House officials and a lifetime ban on lobbying for a foreign government. We've begun preparing to repeal and replace Obamacare. Obamacare is a disaster, folks. It's a disaster. Now, you can say, oh, Obamacare. I mean, they fill up our rallies with people that you wonder how they get there, but they're not the Republican people that our representatives are representing. So we've begun preparing to repeal and replace Obamacare and are deep in the midst of negotiations on a very historic tax reform to bring our jobs back. We're going to bring our jobs back to this country, big league. It's already happening, but big league. I've also worked to install a cabinet over the delays and obstruction of Senate Democrats. You've seen what they've done over the last long number of years. That will be one of the great cabinets ever assembled in American history. You look at Rex Tillerson, is out there negotiating right now. General Mattis, I mentioned before, General Kelly. We have great people. Mick is with us now. We have great people. Among their responsibilities will be ending the bleeding of jobs from our country and negotiating fair trade deals for our citizens. Now, look, fair trade, not free, fair. If a country is taking advantage of us, we're not going to let that happen anymore. Now, every country takes advantage of us, almost. I may be able to find a couple that don't. But for the most part, that would be a very tough job for me to do. Jobs have already started to surge. Since my election, Ford announced it will abandon its plans to build a new factory in Mexico and will instead invest $700 million in Michigan, creating many, many jobs. Fiat Chrysler announced it will invest $1 billion in Ohio and Michigan, creating 2,000 new American jobs. They were with me a week ago. You know, you were here. General Motors likewise committed to invest billions of dollars in its American manufacturing operation, keeping many jobs here that were going to leave. And if I didn't get elected, believe me, they would have left. And these jobs and these things that I'm announcing would never have come here. Intel just announced that it will move ahead with a new plant in Arizona that probably was never going to move ahead with. And that will result in at least 10,000 American jobs. Walmart announced it will create 10,000 jobs in the United States just this year because of our various plans and initiatives. There'll be many, many more, many more. These are a few that we're naming. Other countries have been taking advantage of us for decades, decades and decades and decades, folks. And we're not going to let that happen anymore. Not going to let it happen. And one more thing. I have kept my promise to the American people by nominating a justice of the United States Supreme Court, Judge Neil Gorsuch, who is from my list of 20 and who will be a true defender of our laws and our Constitution. Highly respected. Should get the votes from the Democrats. You may not see that, but he'll get there one way or the other. But he should get there the old-fashioned way, and he should get those votes. This last month has represented an unprecedented degree of action on behalf of the great citizens of our country. Again, I say it, there has never been a presidency that's done so much in such a short period of time. And we haven't even started the big work yet. That starts early next week. Some very big things are going to be announced next week. So we're just getting started. We will be giving a speech, as I said, in Melbourne, Florida at 5 p.m. I hope to see you there. And with that, I just say, God bless America, and let's take some questions. Mara, go ahead. You were cut off pretty violently at our last news conference. Mike Flynn is a fine person, and I asked for his resignation. He respectfully gave it. He is a man who there was a certain amount of information given to Vice President Pence, who's with us today, and I was not happy with the way that information was given. He didn't have to do that because what he did wasn't wrong. What he did in terms of the information he saw, what was wrong was the way that other people, including yourselves in this room, were given that information. Because that was classified information that was given illegally. That's the real problem. And, you can talk all you want about Russia, which was all a, fake news fabricated deal to try and make up for the loss of the Democrats, and the press plays right into it.
Right on!
In fact, I saw a couple of the people that were supposedly involved with all of this. They know nothing about it. They weren't in Russia. They never made a phone call to Russia. They never received a phone call. It's all fake news. It's all fake news. The nice thing is I see it starting to turn, where people are now looking at the illegal, all right, I think it's very important, the illegal giving out classified information. It was, and let me just tell you, it was given out like so much. I'll give you an example. I called, as you know, Mexico. It was a very confidential, classified call. Right.
Listen,
but I
this
called
is
Mexico.
Very important
and
here,
calling
folks.
Mexico, I figured, well, that's nice. I spoke to the president of Mexico, had a good call. All of a sudden, it's out for the world to see. It's supposed to be secret.
Well, they lied about it.
It's supposed to be either confidential or classified in that case. Same thing with Australia.
They lied about it.
All of a sudden, people are finding out exactly what took place. The same thing happened with respect to General Flynn. Everybody saw this. And I'm saying, the first thing I thought of when I heard about it is, how does the press get this information that's classified? How do they do it? You know why? Because it's an illegal process, and the press should be ashamed of themselves. But more importantly, the people that gave out the information to the press should be ashamed of themselves. Really ashamed. Yes, go ahead. Because when I looked at the information, I said, I don't think he did anything wrong. If anything, he did something right. He was coming into office. He looked at the information. He said, that's fine. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be. And he didn't just call Russia. He called and spoke to both ways.
Okay, folks, we're going to have to take a bump out here for our commercial break, and respecting that for our local affiliates as well. But we'll come back and rejoin this. And I can't wait to characterize this for you, what you might have missed in the first 5 or 6 minutes of it. Sit tight. We're coming right back. While we were away, President Obama continued to call out the media, the failing New York Times, the fake Wall Street Journal, and really laid into the Obama administration holdovers as the problem with our national intelligence. Let's rejoin it here.
I'll tell you something. I'll be honest, because I sort of enjoy this back and forth, and I guess I have all my life, but I've never seen more dishonest media than, frankly, the political media. I thought the financial media was much better, much more honest. But I will say that I never get phone calls from the media. How do they write a story like that in the Wall Street Journal without asking me? Or how do they write a story in the New York Times, put it on front page? That was like the story they wrote about the women and me. Front page, big, massive story. And it was nasty. And then they called, they said, we never said that. We like Mr. Trump. They called up my office. We like Mr. Trump. We never said that. And it was they totally misrepresented those very wonderful women. I have to tell you, totally misrepresented. I said, give us a retraction. They never gave us a retraction. And frankly, I then went on to other things. Okay. Go ahead.
You said, I am just wondering, you said today that you had the biggest electoral margin since Ronald Reagan with 304 or 306 electoral votes. And President Obama got 365. Well, I'm talking about the Republican.
Yeah.
Obama 330, George W. Bush 426 when he won as president. So why should Americans trust?
I was given that information. I don't know. I was just given. We had a very, very big margin.
I guess my question is, why should Americans trust you when you accuse the information they receive of being made when you're providing information?
Well, I don't know. I was given that information. I've seen that information around, but it was a very substantial victory. Do you agree with that? Okay, thank you. That's a good answer. Yes. Good.
Can you tell us, in determining that Lieutenant General Flynn there was no wrongdoing in your mind, what evidence was weighed? Did you ask for transcripts?
All right, folks, I'm sorry we have to bump out here again, but the president began all this by saying he's decided he's just going to go straight to the American people because the media is being so dishonest and misrepresenting. This is exactly what I was hoping he would do, by the way, but we'll be back and join it in just a second. Now, don't worry, I'm going to fill you in on whatever you missed. We now rejoin the press conference. Jonathan Karl of ABC News is now yapping at the heels.
About him and reported him. I mean, the leaks are real. You know what they said. You saw it. And the leaks are absolutely real. The news is fake because so much of the news is fake. So one thing that I felt it was very important to do, and I hope we can correct it, because there's nobody I have more respect for, well, maybe a little bit, but than reporters, than good reporters. It's very important to me, and especially in this position. It's very important. I don't mind bad stories. I can handle a bad story better than anybody, as long as it's true. And, you know, over a course of time, I'll make mistakes, and you'll write badly, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay when it is fake. I mean, I watch CNN. It's so much anger and hatred, and just the hatred. I don't watch it anymore because it's very good. He's saying no. It's okay, Jim. It's okay, Jim. You'll have your chance. But I watch others, too. You're not the only one, so don't feel badly. But I think it should be straight. I think it would be, frankly, more interesting. I know how good everybody's ratings are right now, but I think that'd actually be better. People, I mean, you have a lower approval rate than Congress. I think that's right. I don't know, Peter, is that one right? Because, you know, I think they have I heard lower than Congress. But honestly, the public would appreciate it. I'd appreciate it. Again, I don't mind bad stories when it's true. But we have an administration where the Democrats are making it very difficult. I think we're setting a record or close to a record in the time of approval of a cabinet. I mean, the numbers are crazy. When I'm looking, some of them had approved immediately. I'm going forever. And I still have a lot of people that we're waiting for. And that's all they're doing is delaying. And you look at Schumer and the mess that he's got over there, and they have nothing going. The only thing they can do is delay. And, you know, I think they'd be better served by, you know, approving and making sure that they're happy and everybody's good. And sometimes, I mean, I know President Obama lost 3 or 4, and you lose them on the way, and that's okay. That's fine. But I think they would be much better served, John, if they just went through the process quickly. This is pure delay tactics. And they say it, and everybody understands it. Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Well, I had nothing to do with it. I have nothing to do with Russia. I told you. I have no deals there. I have no anything. Now, when WikiLeaks, which I had nothing to do with, comes out and happens to give, they're not giving.
They are not
classified
asking him a
information.
single thing about anything he spoke of in the first half hour.
Hillary cheating on the debates, which, by the way, nobody mentions. Nobody mentions that Hillary received the questions to the debates. Can you imagine, seriously, can you imagine if I received the questions? It would be the electric chair. Okay? He should be put in the electric. You would even call for the reinstitution of the death penalty, okay? Maybe not you, Judge. Yes, we'll do you next, Jim. I'll do you next. Yes.
Important point, I think.
Sure.
Did you direct Mike Flynn to discuss sanctions with the Russian ambassador?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Inauguration.
No, I didn't. Mike,
fired?
excuse me. No, I fired him because of what he said to Mike Pence. Very simple. Mike was doing his job. He was calling countries and his counterparts. So it certainly would have been okay with me if he did it. I would have directed him to do it if I thought he wasn't doing it. I didn't direct him, but I would have directed him because that's his job. And it came out that way. And in all fairness, I watched Dr. Charles Krauthammer the other night say he was doing his job. And I agreed with him. And since then, I've watched many other people say that. No, I didn't direct him, but I would have directed him if he didn't do it. Okay? Jim?
Thank you very much. And just for the record, we don't hate you. I don't hate you.
Okay.
So just want to pass that along. But
ask Jeff Zucker how he got his job, okay?
If I may follow up on some of the questions that have taken place so far here, sir.
Well, not too many. You know, we do have other people. You do have other people, and your ratings aren't as good as some of the other people that are waiting.
Pretty good right now, actually.
Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
If I may ask, sir, you said earlier that WikiLeaks was revealing information about the Hillary Clinton campaign during the election cycle. You welcomed that at one.
I was okay with it.
You said you loved WikiLeaks. At another campaign press conference, you called on the Russians to find the missing 30,000 emails. I'm wondering, sir, if you...
Well, she was actually missing 33, and then that got extended with a whole pile after that.
Maybe my numbers are off a little bit, too.
No, but I did say 30, but it was actually higher than that.
If I may ask you, sir, it sounds as though you do not have much credibility here when it comes to leaking, if that is something that you encouraged in the campaign.
Fair question. Ready?
If I may ask you that.
No, but let me do one at a time. Do you mind?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, in one case, you're talking about highly classified information. In the other case, you're talking about John Podesta saying bad things about the boss. I will say this. If John Podesta said that about me and he was working for me, I would have fired him so fast your head would have spun. He said terrible things about her. But it wasn't classified information. But in one case, you're talking about classified. Regardless, if you look at the RNC, we had a very strong, at my suggestion, and I give Reince great credit for this, at my suggestion, because I know something about this world, I said I want a very strong defensive mechanism. I don't want to be hacked. And we did that. And you have seen that they tried to hack us and they failed. The DNC did not do that. And if they did it, they could not have been hacked. But they were hacked and terrible things came in. And, you know, the only thing that I do think is unfair is some of the things were when I heard some of those things, I picked up the papers the next morning and I said, oh, this is going to be front page. It wasn't even in the papers. Again, if I had that happen to me, it would be the biggest story in the history of publishing or the head of newspapers.
I've never seen this before. This is great. I have never seen this before.
Think of it. They gave her the questions to a debate, and she should have reported herself. Why didn't Hillary Clinton announce that, I'm sorry, but I have been given the questions to a debate or a town hall, and I feel that it's inappropriate, and I want to turn in CNN for not doing a good job.
If I may follow up on that, just something that Jonathan Karl was asking you about. You said that the leaks are real, but the news is fake. I guess I don't understand. It seems that there's a disconnect there. If the information coming from those leaks is real, then how can the stories be fake?
No, the reporting is fake.
And if I may ask, I just want to ask.
Jim, you know what it is? Here's the thing. The public isn't, they read newspapers, they see television, they watch. They don't know if it's true or false because they're not involved. I'm involved. I've been involved with this stuff all my life. But I'm involved. So I know when you're telling the truth or when you're not. I just see many, many untruthful things. And I'll tell you what else I see. I see tone. You know the word tone. The tone is such hatred.
Yes.
I'm really not a bad person, by the way. No, but the tone is such... I do get good ratings, you have to admit that. The tone is such hatred. I watched this morning a couple of the network, and I have to say, Fox and Friends in the morning, they're very honorable people. They're very, not because they're good, because they hit me also when I do something wrong, but they have the most honest morning show. That's all I can say. It's the most honest. But the tone, Jim, if you look, the hatred, sometimes somebody gets, well, you look at your show that goes on at 10 o'clock in the evening. You just take a look at that show. That is a constant hit. The panel is almost always exclusive anti-Trump. The good news is he doesn't have good ratings. But the panel is almost exclusive anti-Trump. And the hatred and venom coming from his mouth. The hatred coming from other people on your network. Now, I will say this. I watch it. I see it. I'm amazed by it. And I just think you'd be a lot better off. I honestly do. The public gets it, you know. Look, when I go to rallies, they turn around, they start screaming at CNN. They want to throw their placards at CNN. You know, I think you would do much better by being
honest,
different. But you just take a look. Take a look at some of your shows in the morning and the evening. If a guest comes out and says something positive about me, it's brutal. Now, they'll take this news conference. I'm actually having a very good time, okay? But they'll take this news conference. Don't forget, that's the way I won. Remember, I used to give you a news conference every time I made a speech, which was like every day. Okay? No, that's how I won. I won with news conference and probably speeches. I certainly didn't win by people listening to you people, that's for sure. But I'm having a good time. Tomorrow they will say, Donald Trump rants and raves at the press. I'm not ranting and raving. I'm just telling you, you're dishonest people. But
they've unleashed a tiger here.
I love this. I'm having a good time doing it. But tomorrow the headlines are going to be Donald Trump rants and raves. I'm not ranting and raving. Go ahead.
I made just one more follow-up.
Should I let him have a little bit more? What do you think, Peter? Peter, should I let him have a little bit more? Sit down. Sit down.
Just because of the attack of fake news and attacking our network, I just want to ask you, sir.
I'm changing it from fake news, though.
Doesn't that undermine?
Very fake news.
I know, but aren't you?
Go ahead.
Real news, Mr. President. Real news.
And you're not related to our new...
I am not related, sir, no. I do like the sound of Secretary Acosta, I must say.
I looked at that name. I said, wait a minute. Is there any relation there, Alex Acosta?
I'm sure you checked that out, sir.
No, I checked it. They said, no, sir. I said, do me a favor. Go back and check the family tree. Okay.
But aren't you concerned, sir, that you are undermining the people's faith in the First Amendment, freedom of the press in this country, when you call stories you don't like fake news? Why not just say it's a story I don't like?
I do that.
Call it fake news. You're undermining confidence in our news media.
Here's the thing.
Isn't that important?
I understand.
You're doing that yourself, Acosta. He's not.
See, I know when I should get good and when I should get bad. And sometimes I'll say, wow, that's going to be a great story. And I'll get killed. I know what's good and bad. I'd be a pretty good reporter, not as good as you. But I know what's good. I know what's bad. And when they change it and make it really bad, something that should be positive, sometimes something that should be very positive, they'll make okay. They'll even make it negative. So I understand it. So, because I'm there, I know what was said, I know who's saying it, I'm there. So it's very important to me. Look, I want to see an honest press. When I started off today by saying that it's so important to the public to get an honest press. The public doesn't believe you people anymore. Now, maybe I had something to do with that. I don't know. But they don't believe you. If you were straight and really told it like it is, as Howard Cosell used to say, right? Of course, he had some questions also. But if you were straight, I would be your biggest booster. I would be your biggest fan in the world, including bad stories about me. But if you go, as an example, you're CNN, I mean, it's story after story after story is bad. I won. And the other thing, chaos. There's zero chaos. We are running. This is a fine-tuned machine. And Reince happens to be doing a good job, but half of his job is putting out lies by the press. I said to him yesterday, this whole Russia scam that you guys are building so that you don't talk about the real subject, which is illegal leaks. But I watched him yesterday working so hard to try and get that story proper. And I'm saying, here's my chief of staff, a really good guy, did a phenomenal job at RNC. I mean, he won the election, right? Won the presidency. We got some senators. We got some all over the country. You take a look. He's done a great job. And I said to myself, and I said to somebody that was in there, I said, you take a look at Reince. He's working so hard just putting out fires that are fake fires. I mean, they're fake. They're not true.
Fake fires.
And isn't that a shame?
Folks, we have reached a point where another time out here that we have to take. And fear not whatever you've missed. And you've caught the main thrust of all this. But we'll be reviewing this and taking your phone calls about it when it's over. We'll be right back. While we were gone, Donald Trump just excoriated Hillary Clinton for giving away 20% of the uranium supply and telling the press they never reported. He excoriated her for that stupid plastic red button to reset relations with Russia. We'll now rejoin the presser as he's continuing to take these people to school.
Care sooner. So we'll be submitting health care sometime in early March, mid-March, and after that we're going to come up, and we're doing very well on tax reform. Yes.
Mr. President, you mentioned Russia. Let's talk about some serious issues that have come up in the last week that you have had to deal with as President of the United States.
Okay.
You mentioned the spy vessel off the coast of the United States.
Not good.
There was a ballistic missile test that many interpret as a violation of an agreement between the two countries, and a Russian plane buzzed a U.S. destroyer.
Not good.
I listened to you.
Excuse me. When did it happen? It happened when, if you were Putin right now, you would say, hey, we're back to the old games with the United States. There's no way Trump can ever do a deal with us because you have to understand, if I was just brutal on Russia right now, just brutal, you would say, oh, isn't that wonderful? But I know you well enough. Then you would say, oh, he was too tough. He shouldn't have done that. Look,
I'm just
all
trying to
of
find
the
out your
wait a minute,
orientation to those.
Excuse me, just one
trying to find out
second.
what
All of those things that you mentioned are very recent. Because probably Putin assumes that he's not going to be able to make a deal with me because it's politically not popular for me to make a deal. So Hillary Clinton tries a reset. It failed. They all tried. But I'm different than those people. Go ahead.
How are you interpreting those moves, and what do you intend to do about them?
Just
have you
the way I
given
said
Rex
it.
Tillerson any advice or counsel on how to deal?
I have, and I'm so beautifully represented. I'm so honored that the Senate approved him. He's going to be fantastic. Yes, I think that Is
Putin testing you, do you believe, sir?
No, I don't think so. I think Putin probably assumes that he can't make a deal with me anymore because politically it would be unpopular for a politician to make a deal. I can't believe I'm saying I'm a politician, but I guess that's what I am now. Because, look, it would be much easier for me to be tough on Russia, but then we're not going to make a deal. Now, I don't know that we're going to make a deal. I don't know. We might not. But it would be much easier for me to be so tough. The tougher I am on Russia, the better. But you know what? I want to do the right thing for the American people. And to be honest, secondarily, I want to do the right thing for the world. If Russia and the United States actually got together and got along, and don't forget, we're a very powerful nuclear country, and so are they. There's no upside. We're a very powerful nuclear country, and so are they. I've been briefed, and I can tell you one thing about a briefing that we're allowed to say because anybody that ever read the most basic book can say it. Nuclear holocaust would be like no other. They're a very powerful nuclear country, and so are we. If we have a good relationship with Russia, believe me, that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
So when you say they're not good, do you mean that
Who
they
did
are
I say is not good?
No, when I read off the three things that have recently happened.
No,
each one
it's
of them
not
you said
good,
they're
but
not
they
good.
happen.
But do they damage the relationship?
They all
undermine
happened recently. No, I'm
this
going to
country's
see what
ability
happens.
to work with Russia?
They all happened recently, and I understand what they're doing because they're doing the same thing. Now, again, maybe I'm not going to be able to do a deal with Russia, but at least I will have tried. And if I don't, does anybody really think that Hillary Clinton would be tougher on Russia than Donald Trump? Does anybody in this room really believe that? Okay? But I tell you one thing. She tried to make a deal. She had the reset. She gave all that valuable uranium away. She did other things. You know, they say I'm close to Russia. Hillary Clinton gave away 20% of the uranium in the United States. She's close to Russia. You know what I gave to Russia? You know what I gave?
I'll tell you, they can't wait to characterize this for you, folks. They have to take another obscene profit break here, but we'll be back. Don't go anywhere here. Just what the doctor ordered. This is Donald Trump going over the head of the media right to the American people, advancing his domestic agenda and being totally transparent, these people. I don't think they don't know. They don't know how to get on the same stage that he's on. American people are going to eat this up when they see it. Back in a second. That's right. Welcome back to the EIB Network. Rush Limbaugh here, and we continue now with the Trump press conference. Over an hour, and Trump's still standing, still triumphing over these little spitballs that are being thrown his way. Let's go back. It's got to be winding down sometime soon.
They're doing this because they feel it, both of them. And Melania goes back and forth, and after Barron finishes school, because it's hard to take a child out of school with a few months left, she and Barron will be moving over to the White House. Okay, thank you. It's a very nice question. Go ahead. Yes. I know this is going to be a bad question, but that's okay.
No, it's not going to be a bad question.
Good, because I enjoy watching you on television. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. Mr. President, I need to find out from you. You said something as it relates to inner cities. That was one of your platforms during your campaign. Now
Fix the inner cities. Yeah.
Fixing the inner cities. What will be that fix and your urban agenda, as well as your HBCU executive order that's coming out this afternoon? See, it wasn't bad, was it?
That was very professional and very good. Yeah, we'll be announcing the order in a little while, and I'd rather let the order speak for itself, but it'll be something I think that will be very good for everybody concerned. But we'll talk to you about that after we do the announcement.
It tells the reporters when they ask good questions and when they're bad.
I was very strong on the inner cities during the campaign. I think it's probably what got me a much higher percentage of the African-American vote than a lot of people thought I was going to get. We did, much higher than people thought I was going to get, and I was honored by that, including the Hispanic vote, which was also much higher. And, by the way, if I might add, including the women's vote, which was much higher than people thought I was going to get. So we are going to be working very hard on the inner cities, having to do with education, having to do with crime. We're going to try and fix as quickly as possible. It takes a long time. It's taken 100 years and more for some of these places to evolve, and they evolved, many of them, very badly. But we're going to be working very hard on health and health care, very, very hard on education, and also we're going to be working in a stringent way and a very good way on crime. You go to some of these inner city places, and it's so sad when you look at the crime. You have people, and I've seen this, and I've sort of witnessed it. In fact, in 2 cases I have actually witnessed it. They lock themselves into apartments, petrified to even leave in the middle of the day. They're living in hell. We can't let that happen. So we're going to be very, very strong. It's a great question, and it's a very difficult situation because it's been many, many years. It's been festering for many, many years. But we have places in this country that we have to fix. We have to help African American people that, for the most part, are stuck there, Hispanic American people. We have Hispanic American people that are in the inner cities, and they're living in hell.
That's right.
You look at the numbers in Chicago. There are 2 Chicagos, as you know. There's one Chicago that's incredible, luxurious, and all, and safe. There's another Chicago that's worse than almost any of the places in the Middle East that we talk about and that you talk about every night on the newscasts. So we're going to do a lot of work on the inner cities. I have great people lined up to help with the inner cities.
Well, when you say the inner cities, are you going to include the CBC, Mr. President, in your conversations with your urban agenda, your inner city
Congressional Black Caucasian?
Are you going to include the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional
Well,
Hispanic
I would.
Caucus,
I tell you what. Do you want to set up the meeting? Do you want to set up the meeting?
No.
Are they friends of yours?
Just a reporter.
No, set up the meeting.
I know some of them, but I'm sure.
Let's go set up a meeting. I would love to meet with the Black Caucus. I think it's great, the Congressional Black Caucus. I think it's great. I actually thought I had a meeting with Congressman Cummings, and he was all excited. And then he said, "Oh, I can't move. It might be bad for me politically. I can't have that meeting." I was all set to have the meeting. We called him, and he was all set. I spoke to him on the phone. Very nice guy.
I hear he wanted that meeting with you as well.
He wanted it, but we called. They can't make a meeting with him. Every day I walk in, I said, I would like to meet with him because I do want to solve the problem. But he probably was told by Schumer or somebody like that, some other lightweight. He was probably told.
That's some New York stuff going on there.
Don't meet with Trump. It's bad politics, and that's part of the problem in this country. Okay, one more. Go ahead.
Lightweight Schumer.
No, one question. Two we can't handle. This room can't handle two. Go ahead. Give me the better of your two.
I'll follow up on my colleague's question about it's not about your personality or your beliefs. We're talking about a rising anti-Semitism around the country, some of it by supporters in your name. What do you
and some of it, and can I be honest with you? And this has to do with racism and horrible things that are put up. Some of it written by our opponents. You do know that. Do you understand that? You don't think anybody would do a thing like that. Some of the signs you'll see are not put up by the people that love or like Donald Trump. They're put up by the other side. And you think it's like playing it straight? No. But you have some of those signs, and some of that anger is caused by the other side. They'll do signs and they'll do drawings that are inappropriate. It won't be my people. It will be the people on the other side. That's right. To anger people like you. Okay.
Anger people like you.
Go ahead.
What are you going to do about it?
Who is that? Where is that?
What are you going to do about it?
Folks, he's enjoying this like I've never seen a president enjoy a press conference. He's toying with these people.
We had a totally divided country for 8 years, and long before that, in all fairness to President Obama, long before President Obama, we have had a very divided. I didn't come along and divide this country. This country was seriously divided before I got here. We're going to work on it very hard. One of the questions I was asked, I thought it was a very good question, was about the inner cities. I mean, that's part of it. But we're going to work on education. We're going to work on we're going to try and stop the crime. We have great law enforcement officials. We're going to try and stop crime. We're not going to try and stop. We're going to stop crime. But it's very important to me. But this isn't Donald Trump that divided a nation. We went 8 years with President Obama, and we went many years before President Obama. We lived in a divided nation. And I am going to try. I will do everything within my power to fix that. I want to thank everybody very much. It's a great honor to be with you. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
That's what he does. That's okay.
We'll do it later.
That's President Trump wrapping up the presser.
Wow.
That's what he does at the end of every one of his rallies. He thanks everybody. He lets them know that he respects them and appreciates them being there. And that's what I've always said is the humility of Donald Trump that nobody sees. And nobody recognizes because they're not looking for it, because they have a bias and a prejudice against the guy. Okay. Welcome, folks, to the EIB network. Our telephone number is 800-282-2882. We'll be getting to phone calls in a minute. I just want to characterize this press conference. It started off with the acknowledgement of the new labor secretary, whose name is Acosta. And then the president literally spelled out what he was doing. Let's grab audio soundbite number 24. Here is his opening and explaining what he's doing, what the purpose of the press conference was.
I'm making this presentation directly to the American people with the media present, which is an honor to have you this morning, because many of our nation's reporters and folks will not tell you the truth and will not treat the wonderful people of our country with the respect that they deserve. Unfortunately, much of the media in Washington, D.C., along with New York, Los Angeles in particular, speaks not for the people, but for the special interests and for those profiting off a very, very obviously broken system. The press has become so dishonest that if we don't talk about it, we are doing a tremendous disservice to the American people. Tremendous disservice. We have to talk about it to find out what's going on, because the press, honestly, is out of control.
And he continued on that theme, and people that were watching this were no doubt cheering, because it's absolutely true. And he gave an example, and it turned out to be the example that I opened the program with. I'm at home last night, and I get this news alert from the Wall Street Journal, and it says that intelligence officials have considered Donald Trump to be so out of touch and so dangerous, they're going to stop sharing intelligence with him. And I looked, I said, well, this is a coup. This is a silent coup if this is true. And I believe it's the Wall Street Journal, for crying out loud. And I'm a student of the drive-bys. And I thought, man, this is, I started, a couple of people that I respect. I fired off notes. Did you see this? What do you think about this? Had some discussions. And I get in here this morning and I find out that the whole thing was bogus. that there are intelligence people throughout the history of our country who do not share intel with the president because it's bad, because it's not worth anything. The Wall Street Journal took something that happens all the time and shaped it and made it look like it's brand new, unprecedented, because Trump is so dangerous and unhinged and bad that they can't afford to share the intel with him. And the underlying theme was, we can't let Trump see the intel because this guy is working with Russia. And he and Russia work together to undermine our election. They continue to have that narrative as what's driving all of their approach to Trump. Everything they're doing is rooted in that. Trump's illegitimacy is rooted in a fake narrative that does not exist and did not happen. That the Russians affected the outcome of the election with the assistance of Donald Trump. And that's the rubric under which that news alert happened last night. So Trump addresses it today and mentions how it's just totally wrong and fake news and a disservice to the American people who read it. And he gave a couple of other examples, citing the New York Times. He did all of this, however, with good cheer. He wasn't nearly as animated and quasi-angry as I am about it. He was, in fact, soft-spoken and measured. He came across as nonpartisan as you can in a political sense. But it was classic, and he just called them out. He called CNN out throughout this press conference as hate-filled and strange to the truth, unable to report the truth, focused on not just disagreeing with him, but hating him, and how this is a disservice to the American people. One of the reporters from CNN, a guy named Jim Acosta, this was classic, stood up. The whole thing was classic because Trump's on one stage and they're on another. And they're in that room. Folks, they're in that room to destroy him today. He announced a press conference. They are in that room to destroy him, whether they want to admit it or not. And there were 3 or 4 questions today that I heard that left no doubt that's what the purpose was. Despite everything he had said today, they asked these insolent questions. Did you ever talk to Russia during the campaign? Trump, how many times do I have to tell you? I don't know anybody in Russia. I didn't talk to anybody in Russia. We didn't talk. He'd just gone on and on, but they kept asking the question because that's all they've got. And they've got nothing there. The stories I have in the stack today clearly state that there is no evidence. These intel people trying to undermine Trump have to admit that there is no evidence that A, the Russians had anything to do with the outcome of our election, or B, Trump was working with them on it to undermine Hillary Clinton. And yet that continues to be the narrative that is fueling the press in their pursuit of Donald Trump. So the CNN guy stands up and effectively says, I'm paraphrasing Jim Acosta, don't you think that these routine attacks of yours on the press and on the media are undermining the First Amendment by calling what we're doing fake news? Aren't you doing a terrible disservice to the Constitution and to the American people by criticizing the media? And there it was. Sure as I'm sitting here watching, there it was. They can sit there all day and not just criticize, they can try to destroy people. They can, using whatever they think they have been granted by the First Amendment power, to go out and literally destroy people. Let Trump criticize the way they do their jobs, and all of a sudden it's a constitutional crisis. Well, how about Obama trashing me all the time? How about Obama trashing Fox News all the time? Was that not a threat to the First Amendment? No, they applauded that. They still do applaud that. They join in the attacks on Fox News, and more often than not, they join in attacks on me, too. But they want you to believe that they are this watchdog and that they are holding truth to power, that they're holding powerful people accountable. They're not doing anything of the sort. The press has gotten to the point where they need a watchdog, and it turns out that Trump is the watchdog. Trump is the guy holding them accountable. Trump is the guy calling them out. I've never seen anything like this today. We have wanted Republican presidents all of my life to deal with these people this way, and the only thing we ever got was Spiro Agnew. We've not seen anything like this, and Trump did it with an air of confidence and self-assuredness. He was not nervous at all. He was having fun with them. He was toying with them. It's like if you got a cat, do you know that you get these little laser pointers and you have a little kitten or a cat and the cat goes nuts chasing the light, it'll run into a wall. That's what I was watching here today. It was fantastic. And the American people are going to eat this up. Now, I said yesterday on this program that what I thought Trump could do to recapture and regain control of the narrative here, if you will, but of the agenda, is simply focus on the domestic agenda. Just get in gear and very publicly start talking about repealing Obamacare, tax reform, building the wall, immigration reform, all of it. Just go full speed at it. And in the process, he'll keep people who voted for him on his side, and they won't care about whatever these efforts are that the press is engaging in with the intel community. And make no mistake, and he called this he accused Obama of running this shadow government. He accused Hillary Clinton and George Soros of being the people paying for people to show up and protest things. He held nothing back. He ridiculed Hillary Clinton for being in part of a deal that gave up 20% of our uranium supply and for having that cheap little red reset button when she became Secretary of State. And each time he mentions Obama, he didn't say shadow government, but he said our opponents are doing what they can. He called all of this fake news. He was on spot with all of this. I think this. You know, it's hard to say. You get caught up in the moment. But this was one of the most effective press conferences I've ever seen. The press is going to hate him even more after this. Don't misunderstand. When I say effective, I'm talking about rallying people who voted for him to stay with him. You know, he made a point of, what chaos? You people tell us, you're reporting chaos here. We're not in chaos. We're a well-oiled machine. We got one of the smoothest running machines in the history of machines. We got one of the best administrations in the history of administrations. And he rattled off the achievements they've had here that the media is not reporting because they're so focused on whether or not Trump worked with Russia to screw Hillary out of the presidency. And reassuring his people he's on top of it, nothing's changed, and everything that he campaigned on, he is doing. And all he's doing is fulfilling campaign promises. And of course the Democrats don't like it. Of course the media doesn't like it, but it isn't going to stop him. And I have to stop myself here. We'll be back and resume after this. So now Trump got some action because right now Fox is just reporting that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has just blown that Wall Street Journal story to smithereens. So any suggestion that serious intelligence would be withheld from the President of the United States is not true, whatever else they went on to say. Fox is reporting it right now. That was fake news that started out as a news alert last night, and then it got blown up today. They ran the story based on the news alert last night, and people reacted to it. It turns out that it was something that happens all the time that was changed slightly to make it look like it was unprecedented, when none of it actually was true. Let me grab a quick phone call here. John in San Diego. Great to have you, sir. What do you think?
Wow, that was a heck of a. That was, I turned the radio on expecting to hear you, and I hear our president, and I was shocked by what I heard. It's about time. I mean, he was just toying with them with the truth. It's easy to do when you have the truth on your side, and these guys are just their hair's on fire and they don't know what to do. I love it. It made my whole day.
What do you think about the way he answers the questions? I mean, they ask him the questions, and he just were you satisfied with that? The way he answered the question, the substance of what he said in answering the questions.
Yes. About 95%. It's off the cuff. When you have the truth on your side, it's really easy to answer questions, and it's really simple when you have the truth on your side. When you have to lie about it, every other question you have to lie. It's tough to keep track of all your lies, and that's the difference between the Democrats and conservatives. It's great.
John,
I don't know what to say.
I'm happy that you tuned in to listen to me. And you heard the president. I'm glad you weren't disappointed. I made a decision to stick with this thing all the way through because I think this is so valuable. I think this is exactly what Trump supporters needed to hear. And those listening to this program today will have heard it. There'll be excerpts tonight. The media is already blowing up. Chuck Todd just tweeted out that President Trump today did the most un-American thing. Criticizing the media is un-American, he said. Now, they're not going to like it. We will be back. Okay, folks, I decided to turn into the hate network during the break here, CNN. Well, the president said there's a lot of hate there, particularly on a 10 o'clock show. Do you know who hosts the 10 o'clock show? That'd be a Malaysian Air 337 vanished in a black hole, Don Lemon. That's right. Don Lemon hosts it. And he said, there's just a lot of hate there on your network. And by the way, go ask Jeff Zucker how he got his job. Jim Acosta sitting there going, what? Anyway, so I tuned in to get a little hate, because I knew I was going to get some hate. CNN. And they brought in their media analyst, Brian Stelter. Do you know how Brian Stelter got started? Brian Stelter started a blog called TV Newser. And it was a blog about what's on TV. It was just a blog. I mean, he was one of these guys that, living at home, they were interested in TV, started. New York Times hired him as a media critic. And then CNN stole him away. Now, get this. Brian Stelter, you see if you can understand this. Brian Stelter, I had to write it down. He said that it's obvious that Trump is watching the media too much because he had all this criticism for the media. And he needs to stop watching the media, and he needs to start doing his job because he's responding way too much to the media. And he's responding way too soon to the media. So he'll watch the media and then he'll tweet something or he'll... Can you believe that? Like the media guy at CNN basically says, we think the president should watch less of us. Well, why is that? Why in the world, because there's two things at work here. Obviously, the media would die to be able to prove they're influencing presidential action. They would die if they could prove that. The second thing is that who are they doing these shows for? I mean, who are these media people doing their shows for? To say that the president is he's watching too much media, he's responding too much to it, and too soon. Does that mean that there are questionable things in the media that the president ought not be responding to? And if that's the case, why? I mean, if everything new people in media are doing is up front and above board and straight down the middle, and you're just doing the news, what's wrong with anybody watching it and reacting to it? Well, the president, he's watching too much. How can that be? It's almost like saying he's taking us too seriously. Well, if you think that the president or anybody watching you is taking you too seriously, what does that say about what you're doing? It's tantamount to saying, gosh, he shouldn't believe everything he sees here. Well, why not? It's the cable news network. It's CNN. It's the truth. It's whatever. You're the cable news network of record. Why shouldn't the president believe what he sees? Well, he just thought not. He's responding too much. He's responding too soon. He's reacting way too much to the media. Well, then there must be a reason why. It must be a mistake to be doing so. Why? Is because what's there not true? Is because some of it's just half-baked? Is some of it you're just making it up and having fun here and you don't intend for some of it to be taken seriously? Why? Why should the president or anybody else not react to it? The president also made a big deal of saying he inherited a mess. And he detailed the things that made up the mess. He inherited a mess at home. He inherited a mess abroad. Instability everywhere, but he was elected to fix it. He's starting to fix it. He's beginning to do everything he promised he would do on the campaign. They have many productive talks already underway in the area of foreign policy. They have had much more productivity than anybody knows right now because some of the stuff cannot be broadcast. Some of it has to be maintained in private. But he said that there is phenomenal success happening already, that his defense secretary submitting a plan to defeat ISIS, that ISIS has spread like cancer. He said ISIS is another mess that he has inherited, but that he promised to eliminate the problem and will. He said he's going to build and rebuild the military. He said there will not be a military in the world anywhere near as good as ours. He wants a strong military that he hopes he never has to use. And that is the perfect definition of deterrence. Left-wingers never understand. You tell them you want to build a brand-new stealth bomber. It's just a machine of war. It's a weapon of war. It kills. No, we don't want to use it. Well, that's silly, then it's a waste of money. Why would you build a bomber? Do you want to? Because it's called deterrence. We build the mightiest military in the world. It sends a message. If you attack us, that's the end of you. You build these things for the safety of the American people. He kept going back to that everything he's doing is for the American people and then for the world, secondarily. Folks, it was masterful. And I don't think it wasn't scripted. It was nothing that the president had to think long and hard about. He didn't have to make notes and memorize them and go out. It was improv. It was spontaneous. We had a caller in the last half hour who mentioned how good that was. It was the truth. When you've got the truth and when you're telling people the truth of what you really think, you don't have to remember it. It's in your heart. It's like anything else you believe. You don't need a cram course on what you believe. You don't really need advisors to tell you what you believe. You believe it. It's in your heart. It's in your mind. And you can easily explain it to people who have to remember it. And that's who Donald Trump was today. And they came at him from here. One of the questions that on CNN, they said, this is horrible. This was a very, very bad moment for the president. April Ryan is a reporter for I think it's the Urban Network. It's an African-American network. She got into a spat with Omarosa earlier this week about something. And she was asking him, well, you had made some promises about the inner city to your campaign. What are you going to do with the inner city? What is the inner city? And he agreed the inner city is a mess. It's been a mess for a long time. And she said, would you meet with the CBC? Would you meet with the Congressional Black Caucasians? And Trump said, I would love to meet with the Congressional Black Caucasians. Well, you set it up. They won't take my phone call. I tried to get hold of Elijah Cummings, and he was going to meet with me. Elijah Cummings in Baltimore, he's a member of the Congressional Black Caucasians. And Trump said, I had a meeting scheduled with Elijah Cummings. I was looking forward. He's a nice guy. And all of a sudden he backed out. And Trump said, I think he had to back out because he was getting a lot of heat from his friends saying, you can't meet with Trump. So he looks at April Ryan. Could you set it up? Could you set up the meeting? She was flummoxed. She was speechless. I don't know what she expected. It's almost like she expected Trump to poo-poo the idea of meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus, but she looked shocked that he would do so, and then said that, could you set it up for me? Now, the CNN people thought that he was being disrespectful. They thought that Donald Trump was insulting her by having her set up the meeting. And that's where they don't get the guy. He was including her in the story. He was giving her a role to play. He was showing her respect. But they don't see it that way because they live in a different world, folks. They come from a world of political correctness and no sense of humor whatsoever. And because of that, they're never going to understand Donald Trump. The sense of humor thing alone is going to prevent them. But they're also on different worlds. They're in different universes. They have not encountered somebody who thinks like Donald Trump, who is still around and talking. In their world, people who talk and act like Donald Trump have been shamed and humiliated and relegated to obscurity because they're so abrasive and mean-spirited and rough around the edges. But now they're dealing with a president who's this way. And in their protected little snowflake world, everywhere they've been in their lives, governed and documented by political correctness. They're shocked. Like, can you imagine literally believing that what you do and who you are is above criticism? And yet you get to not only criticize people, you get to destroy them. If you're in the media, you can criticize anybody, you can destroy anybody, you can fake news, you can make it up. But let somebody criticize you, and that's the greatest offense, and that is an offense to the Constitution. Jim Acosta of CNN said, aren't you undermining the First Amendment by calling what we do fake news? And I'm looking at the TV. So, Mr. Acosta, if anybody's undermining anybody, it's you. And your cohort's undermining the whole concept of news and media. Okay, a brief break. You'll have more of your turn at this when we get back. Donna in Frederick, Maryland. You're next. Hello.
Thank you so much, Rush. It is an honor to be part of your program and exercise my First Amendment privilege. President Trump did a phenomenal job, especially with regard to the questionable illegal intel issues and General Flynn. And also the highlight to me, and I think I could speak for many of we the people when I say this, is when he called the fake news the really fake news.
No question that he hits a home run when he does that. He told them, by the way, he said, you all have a lower approval rating than Congress. And he made a point of saying, you people can make my job tougher when you tell these things that are not true. I'm on the phone with the president of Mexico. And A, you leak it, and B, you lie about things. And the same thing with a phone call to the leader of Australia. You leaked it, he hung up on me. None of it happened. He said, you people can make it harder for world leaders to want to talk to anybody here in Washington if somebody finds out about it and leaks and lies about what was said. He said, I think you could all improve your businesses if you just tell the truth, if you just try to be straight up with the news. I mean, he could honestly say I was trying to help him. Of course, it'll never happen because in their minds, they're